Hello students, welcome back to YSR Academy. We start with the second lecture of the human reproduction chapter. Previously, what have we talked about? We discussed with the male reproductive system. We have talked about the structure. We have talked about different parts of the male reproductive system. We also talked about different kinds of ducts. एंड फिर हम लोगों ने सेक्स ग्लैंड्स के बारे में भी बात किया था. सो नाउ वी मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट विच इज द फीमेल रिप्रोडक्टिव सिस्टम. एग्जैक्टली लाइक मेल रिप्रोडक्टिव सिस्टम, नो चेंजेस, just that it is divided into two major parts. Of course the parts are different, but along with that we have 7 different divisions of the female reproductive system. Starting with a pair of ovaries. Ovaries are present in 2. Okay, then you have the pair of oviducts. You have uterus, which holds the baby for the period of 9 months. Then you have the vagina. You have the external genitalia, which is called as vulva altogether because it contains multiple parts inside that. Then you have the pair of vestibular glands, and then finally the pair of mammary glands. So we are going to discuss both of them separately under the umbrella of external genitalia and internal genitalia. Internal is the one which is present inside the female's body, and external is the one which is present outside. So to speak, we're going to mix both the concepts together to give you a whole picture of the female reproductive system. Students, moving on with the very first structure that you see. Can you guess what it is? What it is? Absolutely right. This is nothing but the section of an ovary. So it's a TS of an ovary. Okay. So once you take and transverse section of the ovary, you're going to find some circular structures or cellular structures, and those are nothing but the developing ovum. So it is those cellular bodies which will eventually develop into a structure which is called as ovum. So students, when we talk about ovary, which is a section of an ovary, ovary is a primary female sex organ producing eggs, okay, and reproductive hormones. Now these hormones can be of different types. We'll have to understand that a bit later. It's solid, oval and almond shaped, measuring about 3 centimeters long to 1.5 centimeters wide to 1 centimeter thick. That's the dimensions. Located in the upper lateral pelvis near the kidney. So the ovaries are located on the lateral side of the body, sideways near to the kidneys. Yeah. Each ovary is held in place by certain connective tissues, and those connective tissues are called as ligaments. So ligaments are those which are going to hold the organ to the abdominal wall. You don't want that organ to be hanging around. So what do you do is you are going to hold that organ in place with the help of a specialized connective tissue, and that specialized connective tissue is none other than the ligaments, including there are certain types of ligaments which our syllabus covers, one of which is a broad ligament and second is an ovarian ligament. So these are the 2 ligaments which we have to discuss, which holds the ovary in place. The ovary produces 5 major hormones, of which we're going to discuss the function of each and every hormone as and when the chapter proceeds. What are these hormones? Number 1 is estrogen. Second is progesterone. Third is relaxin. And then you have an activin. And the 5th hormone is called as inhibin. Every hormone has its own role to play, and on the subsequent events which will follow either menstrual cycle, either pregnancy, or maybe development of ovum, or maybe secondary sexual characters, so on and so forth. So every hormone has its own role and bit to play. Okay, students, moving on, guys. Now we move on to understanding the section of an ovary in more detailed view. So what do we understand? So when we talk about ovary, as usual, any organ has 2 layers. So the outermost layer is called as the cortex. The inner layer is called as the medulla, covered by germinal epithelium. This is a tissue which is going to help in development of ovum. Yes, guys, containing a special type of a cell which is called as primordial follicle, which is a type of a cell, is going to form something called as oogonia. Okay, oogonia is nothing but the ovum. Now, oogenesis is the process of development of ovum which starts before birth. Females में वो थोड़ा एक development का जो process है that begins way before. So it starts around maybe a second or a third month of gestation or pregnancy, and starting from that moment till till the puberty, you have the process going on. And once the female hits puberty, then there is ovulation. So basically this process is going to begin way as early as at the time of the birth. And at the time of the birth, we have about 1 million primordial follicles. 1 million is 10 lakhs. And these 10 lakh of primordial follicles are going to reduce to 60 to 80,000 at the time of puberty. And rest of the follicles are going to die, or simply, let's say, degenerate due to a process of atresia. Atresia simply means that it is a process of degeneration. Okay, a development of primordial follicle into Graafian. What is a Graafian follicle, students? This is a Graafian follicle that you see here. This is a Graafian follicle. Stating that Graafian follicle is the mature follicle which is going to release a cell which is called as ovum. Actually, it is not ovum. We call it as secondary oocyte. But for now, as we don't know the difference between the two, let's assume that it is ovum. Okay. Now restart at the menarche. So Graafian follicle का जो process है, it is going to restart during the menarche. What do you understand, students? Menarche, guys. Menarche is when the menstrual cycle begins. So when the menses starts, at that point it's menarche and continues till menopause. What is menopause? Menopause is when the menses or menstrual cycle is going to halt. They keep producing of about 416 eggs in the entire reproductive years. Now in our textbook they have given this value which is 416. ये आया कहाँ से मैं आपको बताता हूँ. एक female का total fertile period. Okay, females fertile period. Okay, ये जो fertile period होता है ना, what is a fertile period, guys? Fertile period is nothing but a time between menarche to menopause. ठीक है? So our textbook says it is approximately 32 years. Okay, menarche से menopause 32 साल का time है. तो एक rough figure लेके चल रहे हैं अपन. Okay. And we all know that in one menstrual cycle there is release of one ovum. And one menstrual cycle is of approximately for 28 days. So we have one menstrual cycle for one ovum, which is 13 menstrual cycles for 13 ovums in 1 year. सर 12 आने चाहिए थे, 13 क्यों आए? हर महीने के 2-2 दिन भी, जो 28 दिन का साइकिल है, तो हर महीने के 2 दिन बचे, तो हर महीने के 2 दिन वापस 12 महीना हुआ. So again you have one cycle which is in your hands. So you have total 13 menstrual cycles. Each menstrual cycle releases one ovum. So you have 13 ovums a year. So how many in 32 years? So now if you want to find out the total ovums released, it is number of ovums per year into total number of years, which is equals 416. So this is the value that we have obtained. Obviously, the fertile period from female to female will vary. ये क्या एक fixed value होता नहीं है. We talk about human body, so ये ऐसा नहीं है कि फीमेल X में भी वही होगा, फीमेल Y में भी वही होगा, फीमेल Z, ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. तो मतलब डेफिनेटली वो एक डायनामिक प्रोसेस है, बट मोर और लेस वी कैन कंसिडर दैट द वैल्यू लाइज नियर दिस. ओके, चलो फिर. Now this excuse me, this is the structure that you see is the ovarian histology, which is actually the section of an ovary. Okay, now in the mature ovary there are cyclical changes. Each menstrual cycle involves maturation of primordial follicles, and these primordial follicles, which are the initiator or progenitors, we can say, these follicles are going to eventually mature into primary. Then you have secondary follicles, and then you have the Graafian follicles. So these are going to, mature. So primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary, and finally we have Graafian. This Graafian follicle is going to release an egg. इसी egg को हम लोगों ने बोला था, correct, secondary. This egg was called as secondary oocyte. ठीक है? Sir, is there any difference between secondary oocyte and ovum? Yes, but we'll talk about it later. During the process of ovulation, and the remaining follicle forms a structure which is called as corpus luteum. Release होने के बाद जो structure बचेगा वो structure को हम लोग कहेंगे corpus luteum. Can you see the yellow color, guys? This yellow color that you see here is nothing but the corpus लूटियम. ये तब बनता है जब ओवम ग्राफियन फॉलिकल से रिलीज हो जाएगा. एक बार ग्राफियन फॉलिकल से ओवम रिलीज हो गया, then we have this. Okay, if the fertilization does not occur, okay, अगर fertilization मान लो sperm नहीं है, in that case what is going to happen? This corpus luteum is going to degenerate and form a structure which is called as corpus albicans, and corpus albicans is nothing but a scar tissue which is yellow in color. So basically what are we talking about? Only and only when the fertilization takes place, ovum is already out, you have the sperm, fertilization has happened. After fertilization, the remnants, the remaining part of the Graafian follicle is going to convert itself into a structure which is called as luteum. Luteum has its own function, and then post that further changes to luteum are nothing but the last degenerated structure you can say, and that is called as the albicans. And albicans is a scar tissue, and वो scar tissue जो है वो yellow color का होता है, याद रखना जरूरी है. ठीक है, this is the structure of a Graafian follicle. So this is your Graafian follicle, students. So Graafian follicle which contains a secondary oocyte, so वो actually ovum नहीं है, वो एक secondary oocyte है. Okay, दोनों में difference होगा. It's surrounded by many layers. Yeah, the very first layer is called as zona pellucida, which is very, very important because it's a layer of fertilization. So essentially this layer is going to help you in bringing about fertilization, and this fertilization to later we are going to understand why zona pellucida remains supremely important. And then the outermost layer, as you can see there highlighted, is theca externa. Okay, this is theca externa. Then inner to externa is the interna. So you have interna. Interna is extremely important layer because it is going to produce a very important hormone which is called as estrogen. Students, why estrogen is necessary? Correct, it gives secondary sexual characters in females. So females के लिए secondary sexual characters का जो काम जो hormone करने वाला है, that hormone is estrogen. So estrogen is that hormone which is released by the theca interna of the Graafian follicle. So as and only when you have the Graafian follicle in place, you have interna. Only and only when you have interna, you have estrogen. मतलब ऐसा कभी नहीं हो सकता कि एस्ट्रोजन है और इंटरना ग्राफियन फॉलिकल नहीं है. मतलब ये दोनों बहुत ही सिनोनिमिटी में चलते हैं, सिनोनिमस है, म्यूचुअलिस्टिक है. Inside a follicle, when you go inside, you have membrane granulosa cells. These membrane granulosa cells are all the yellowish color cells that you see there. These are membrane granulosa cells, which divides into two layers. Okay, one is called discus proligerus, and second is called as corona radiata. The discus proligerus and corona radiata, ये जो secondary oocyte को surrounding layer है, this is your corona radiata. Yeah. The peripheral cells, the group of membranous cells, are corona radiata, and then other cells are nothing but the discus proligerus. Now, cells with the oocyte and the surrounding granulosa cells are called as cumulus oophoricus or cumulus oophorus. And these are the cells which are surrounding the basal part of the ovum, which is this. So, actually, मैं ये पूरे complex का बात कर रहा हूँ. ठीक है, ये इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स तो हमारे लिए बहुत एसेंशियल हो जाता है. ठीक है, इसमें कि ये नीचे वाले सेल्स एंड फिर देन सराउंडिंग सेल्स, ऐसा डिविजन रहेगा. बीच में कैविटी बन गया है, वो बीच में कैविटी जो बना है, दैट कैविटी इज कॉल्ड एज एंट्रम. ओके, एंट्रम फिल्ड विद अ फ्लूइड व्हिच इज कॉल्ड एज एंट्रम फ्लूइड. सो यू हैव एंट्रम. ओके, एंट्रम डेफिनेटली फिल्ड विद फ्लूइड, एंड दैट फ्लूइड इज कॉल्ड एज एंट्रल फ्लूइड. इसको आप एंट्रल फ्लूइड बोलते हो. ठीक है, एंट्रम इज अ फ्लूइड फिल्ड कैविटी व्हिच द oocyte and the membrane granulosa cells contains a fluid which is called as liquor folliculi, or in short also called as antral fluid. Yeah, Now students, move on to the next part. We have discussed all about ovary. Now moving on to the oviduct, fallopian tube or the uterine tube. One and the same for all the three names. Okay, now what are these? So basically, essentially, when we talk about the fallopian tube and oviduct rather, you can say. So these fallopian tubes are approximately 10 to 12 centimeters. Okay, they lie horizontally. So as you can imagine, आपके पास ओवरी है, then this is a horizontal tube. Okay, then यहाँ से वो यूट्रस चालू होता है, ये यूट्रस है. Then this is a horizontal tube, approximately lengthening 10 to 12 centimeters. At the proximal part, the ovary, and the distal part of the uterus. Proximal part is towards the ovary. Away is the uterus. Okay, they're lined internally by ciliated epithelium. The ciliated epithelium is going to really help you for movement of, correct, it is going to help in movement of ovum. Okay, when? During the process of ovulation. So ovulation के दौरान वो चीज हो सकता है. So something to really note about. Next part we have is infundibulum, ampulla, isthmus or corona. These are the three parts in the fallopian tube. So you say for example, now ये जो fallopian tube होता है ऐसा finger like होता है, ऐसा है. Okay, इसके अंदर you have so this is your fimbriae. Okay, there is one point in the fallopian tube which is the ampulla. Okay, and then the later part which actually connects the uterus, so that is your isthmus. So यहाँ से वो uterus आएगा, so जहाँ से uterus चालू होता है, that region, that part is the isthmus. Okay, infundibulum, ये वाला part which bears a finger like projections, and these finger like projections are called as fimbriae. Okay, they have their unique function. Okay, so these are the distinguishing parts of the fallopian tube. Okay, as you can see वहाँ पे जो मैंने बताया, infundibulum starting वाला part है, finger like projections को आप fimbriae बोलते हो. Ampulla बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाएगा, बिकॉज एम्प्यूला जो गाइस है ना, एम्प्यूला को याद रखना है. एम्प्यूला इज अ पॉइंट ऑफ फर्टिलाइजेशन. एम्प्यूला इज अ पॉइंट ऑफ फर्टिलाइजेशन. यहाँ पे फर्टिलाइजेशन होता है, यहाँ पे फर्टिलाइजेशन का इवेंट होने वाला है. Whenever the sperms meet. Infundibulum is a proximal funnel, bears finger-like projection called fimbriae. Ciliary actions and the movement of the fimbriae assist in propelling the ovulated egg towards the ostium, which means this finger-like projections are going to move this way. Okay, push the ovum towards the ampulla for the event of fertilization. Okay. Now, something like this. So you have an ampulla, you have an uterus, this is isthmus. So यहाँ पे imagine करिए ऐसे finger like projections होंगे, तो ovum को push करने का और एक जगह पे fertilize करना पड़ेगा. That point of fertilization is called as ampulla. This is the region that I'm talking about. Okay, guys. Okay. Ampulla. Okay, it is the point where ovum fertilization occurs during conception. Very, very important. When we talk about isthmus or cornua, it's distal part and the duct opening into uterus. So इसका कोई सब बड़ा significance नहीं है. ये ऐसा point है जहाँ पे uterus start होने वाला है. So this is the isthmus that we are talking about. Okay. Now we talk about students about the uterus. Uterus is commonly known as womb. It's a hollow pear-shaped organ located behind the urinary bladder. ओके, यूरिनरी ब्लैडर के पीछे है. 3 पार्ट्स रहेंगे. अपर पार्ट को हम लोग बोलते हैं फंडस, मिडल पार्ट को हम लोग बोलेंगे बॉडी, लोअर पार्ट को हम लोग बोलेंगे सर्विक्स. इंटरनली यूटेराइन वॉल हैज 3 layers. सो बेसिक 3 layers. यू हैव पेरीमेट्रियम, देन यू हैव मायोमेट्रियम एंड देन यू हैव एंडो. पेरीमेट्रियम इज द आउटर मोस्ट लेयर. Yeah, it's an outermost layer. This is that layer which is going to, hold the position, hold the contractibility and expandability of the uterus. The middlemost layer is called as a myometrium. This is very essential. Later we'll discuss. And then endometrium is very, very important for holding the baby. So it actually is a variable thickness membrane. So iska thickness jo hai na, it's extremely variable. Uterus measures about 7.5 centimeters long, 5 centimeters broad to 2.5 centimeters thick, playing crucial role in pregnancy through implantation and nourishment of the developing fetus. So two things provide nourishment. Number one. Second, hold the baby for the period of 9 months, and it can expand to a very great extent than its original size. So if its original size is this much, it can extend this much. So there is a special ability of these tissues to really expand beyond our imagination, and that is why these are extensively highly distensible organs, and they can hold the baby for the 9 months duration. Now, what you see, guys, is a vulva, which is the complete external structure of the female's reproductive system, which is also consisting of major two parts. Now, what you see here is a bigger opening called as the vagina, and then you have the uterus. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's urethra, and then you have something called as the clitoris. Clitoris is an erectile tissue, guys, which is similar to penis in males. It's kind of an homologosity structure. In vagina, 7 to 9 centimeters, situated between the cervix and the vestibule, within the mucosal, muscular, and the adventitial layer. So we have 3 layers. You have mucosal layer, you have muscular layer, and you have adventitial layer. The stratified, non-keratinized epithelium, which stores glycogen. Glycogen gives environment its acidic nature. Why is the nature acidic? To prevent any kind of lateral entry, okay, to prevent any kind of infections entering into the body, and that is why the environment is kept acidic. Okay, vaginal orifice, partially covered by a membranous structure which is called as hymen, functions as a passage for menstrual flow and childbirth. So vagina has 2 important functions. Number one, to receive the sperms, okay, during the event of copulation or sex, and second, to deliver the baby after 9 months duration. So essentially 2 functions, and this we have already talked about in the male reproductive system, that while we talk about an MRS, males have a common duct. Yeah, it's a urinogenital duct, which is an UGD, wherein males can pass the urine and the sperm from the same tube. But while we talk about females, you have a vagina, which is a separate opening. You have urethra as a separate opening. So 2 separate openings present in a oval structure, which is vulva, and it contains some other supportive tissues as well. So now we are talking about the vagina at first. Now, students, we move on to the detailed anatomy of all the parts of the vulva, which is nothing but the external genitalia. The external genitalia, or the female genital organs, collectively called as vulva or pudendum, include vestibule, labia minora, clitoris, labia majora, and mons pubis. The vestibule encloses the urethral and the vaginal opening. So, जो पूरा area है, okay, पूरा area, starting from the vagina to the urethra, वो पूरे area को हम vestibule कहते हैं, while labia minora forms the hood around the clitoris. So around the clitoris, this is the clitoris, so there is a covering. That covering is called as labia minora, okay, and this clitoris is an erectile tissue and is extremely sensitive. Not that it can become erect, that's not what I am saying. To an extent, yes, it can become, but that is not under the scope of our syllabus, but it is homologous to penis. So they have that characteristics which is inbuilt. The labia majora are fleshy folds homologous to scrotum, surrounding and protecting the other genital parts. Mons pubis is a fleshy elevation showing above. Okay, so this is the mons pubis, and then you will have mons pubis will contain something called as pubic hairs. Are we clear with this? Any doubts, students? I hope you're able to understand. We're going understanding and going through each and every word and concept in detail. Okay, so now we have accessory glands in females, a pair of glands homologous to bulbourethral glands. Cowper's gland in males, which are again homologous, opens into the vestibule and release a lubricating fluid. This is very, very essential. They're also called vestibular glands, or also called as the Bartholin's gland. So these glands again do the function of lubrication. Yeah. Now, students, we move on to the last part of an external genitalia in females, which is the mammary gland, or also called as the breast glands, the breast in general. An accessory organ for production of milk post parturition. Okay, very, very important, because to feed the young one is the very essential function developed at puberty under the influence of estrogen and progesterone. These are the two hormones which will help in development of mammary glands. Okay, with prolactin, okay, very, very essential because it's a milk producing hormone, aiding lactiferous tubules for the development during pregnancy. Located in the subcutaneous tissue, each gland contains a type of a connective tissue, numerous lactiferous ducts. These lactiferous ducts are the structure that you can see here, okay, and is divided into 15 to 20 lobes with an alveolar glands. These alveolar glands are the gland lobules which are going to essentially store the milk, okay. Alveolar glands secrete milk stored inside an alveoli, which opens into the mammary retubules, forming ducts that converge into the nipple. So all of these ducts are going to merge together. Let's change the color of the pen, please. So you have these ducts. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, these ducts are going to converge like this, and they're going to form a structure which is called as the converge into an area which is called as the nipple, and nipple through which the milk is going to be sucked out through baby's ejection reflex or the suckling reflex, which we don't have in our syllabus. So you have something about the mammary glands. And while we talk about mammary glands, this finishes with the external genitalia of females. So now talking about the puberty or sexual maturity in males specifically, because we're done with an FRS. So students, when we talk about in male puberty, puberty marks the age where the reproductive system becomes functional and the sex organs will start producing gametes and hormones. In males, puberty begins between the ages 12 to 15, driven by a very major important hormone, which is testosterone. Secondary sexual characteristics develop and the system remains functional for life. So hormone which can do the job of sexual maturation in males is testosterone. While we talk about female sexual maturity, it becomes functional marked by onset of the menstrual cycle, and start at the beginning of a menses is called as menarche, typically occurring at the ages 10 to 14. Females experience cyclical changes, which are menstrual cycle from menarche until menopause. Menopause is what? Just bataya tha, is stoppage of the menstrual cycle, which usually occurs at the ages 45 to 50. The period from menarche to menopause is the female reproductive age controlled by gonadotropic hormones, after which natural conception is not possible. So post-menopause, you will not have ability to conceive through natural recourses. So in that cases, we'll have to adopt with, artificial methods. But again, as I said, completely depends from female to female. As long as you have the hormones in place, things will be pretty smooth. Yeah. Now, students, in this lecture, we have discussed with the female reproductive system, talked about the internal genitalia, we have talked about the external genitalia. In the next lecture, which will be the next video coming up, which will be dealing with the menstrual cycle, and we begin with the next part of the chapter. Okay, I don't want that to be conjunct with this, so we are going to have a separate video for menstrual cycle. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please stay tuned. Do watch the previous lecture series of the same chapter and the earlier chapter that we've already finished. I'll get back to you very soon. Till then, take care guys, take care and stay safe.